maybe they see it as a situation where if I can give them something, that's better than them getting nothing. But
Hmm.
when you step outside of what you know, that's where there's a problem because you
Yeah.
could be giving genuinely bad advice. If you
Right.
don't know your stuff, just leave it. Leave it.
Who should I listen to about nutrition? It's fair to say that there are a lot of competing voices weighing in on the topic these days. How much should we be eating? When should we be eating? Are there foods that I should be avoiding? Are there foods that I must be eating? Influencers, personal trainers, nutritionists, and a strange number of chiropractors have all decided that they need to weigh in on this debate. And if you are someone who is just going on the internet looking for viable nutrition advice, this is going to be a problem for you. You are going to have a bit of a hard time. Even doctors, who are generally going to be the first authorities that most of us go to when it comes to our health, the fact is that they tend to be missing a few pieces of the puzzle themselves. So, who do you actually listen to? And what is the difference between a nutritionist and a dietitian anyway? As it happens, I spoke to a registered dietitian nutritionist to try to get a little bit more insight on this exact topic.
My name is Justin Collins. I am a registered dietitian nutritionist. I have a master's degree in public health, or master's of public health, and that was specifically in nutrition and dietetics. Hold a bachelor's degree in exercise science as well. I'm a certified personal trainer.
For those who aren't familiar, a nutritionist is a professional who is, supposedly at least, qualified to provide individuals or groups with guidance on their nutrition. Now, a dietitian or dietitian nutritionist is in a similar position, except they are considered qualified to provide medical nutritional therapy. Essentially, if you have a condition where a medical nutritional intervention would make sense, such as diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, these are situations where a registered dietitian would likely be involved, since we know that making changes to one's nutrition under these circumstances will actually most likely create a positive difference in their outcomes. The thing is, this can actually get extra complicated in the United States, where, as Justin enlightened me, there can be a broad spectrum of regulatory differences on this question.
In the States, at least, the United States, you have what are called your green states, your yellow states, and your red states. Green states don't require any kind of licensure, which is different than a credential.
Right.
Any kind of licensure to do nutrition business, essentially. And so the doors are wide open. Anybody can do basically whatever they want.
Right.
You have yellow states where it's kind of a iffy thing. Like there are some statutes and regulations in place that limit that. And then there are red states where it's really tight and you don't have a whole lot of options.
So it's fair to say that a dietitian does have to go through a slightly more intensive and rigorous educational process to get that credential.
It used to be you had to have a bachelor's degree. Now you need a master's degree. You need about 1,000-ish hours of internship, unpaid usually.
Oh,
And,
gosh.
Yeah. Then you have to pass the national exam, of which only something like 60% pass within the first year, meeting the requirements to actually take the exam. So that doesn't mean they don't just pass it on their first try, but they may try a couple times. And within that first year, only 60% of people with all these qualifications, the bachelor's in the past, the master's now, and the 1,000-ish internship hours, only about 60% of people are passing this test within their first year.
Meanwhile, for a nutritionist, it seems that the rules are a little bit more lax.
The requirements to become a nutritionist are often just saying you're a nutritionist, which really doesn't even compare.
So we now understand the differences in qualifications a little better, but that still hasn't answered the question. How can you tell if someone is actually qualified to help you if you don't necessarily have a specific medical condition where a dietitian would be required?
I don't think the credential itself says whether or not somebody is or isn't qualified to, and I'm not speaking legally, just
Yes.
from a skill perspective, I suppose. It doesn't say whether or not somebody's qualified to give that advice, but if you listen to what they're saying, that can help to offer hints. Are they speaking in absolutes? That's usually a red flag.
The note about people speaking in absolutes is an important one. It's easy to bypass our critical thinking when the person speaking to us, for example, is our doctor.
I recently talked with a lady, and she was saying how her doctor told her to stop eating beans. This lady was Hispanic, which is important to note because in the Hispanic culture, beans are like a staple food. And so, I can't have beans. Why can't she have beans? Like, beans have all sorts of health benefits. There can be doctors who genuinely know their stuff when it comes to nutrition, but the standard for their education usually requires like 1, maybe 2 nutrition classes at most, and that's it.
I asked about what people that he works with commonly struggle with, and this is what Justin had to say.
I think it's just putting things into perspective, what the big rocks are, and just following through with that. Like I said, people are often stepping over the big things just to focus on the minutia. And because they're spending so much effort on things that are giving them such marginal, maybe at all, benefits, they end up confused. They end up frustrated. They end up quitting. I'll often tell people, as long as you don't quit, you can't fail. But I mean, if you continue on and continue on and continue on without seeing the results you're looking for, you're cycling your weight over time and you're just getting frustrated, I get wanting to quit. But as long as you don't quit, you can't fail. That's what I often tell people.
It's cat break time.
Lastly, I decided to finish with a little bit of a lightning round, addressing a handful of the hot nutrition topics on the internet today. There are some controversial ones here, so let's get into it.
Give me your quick thoughts on carnivore.
Not a fan, especially on the back end of things, how that works. But for the very specific person, maybe it works.
Okay.
Now, if I'm a betting man, I'm going to say pass.
Pass. Okay. But yeah, we'll just treat this as smash or pass. Keto.
Same thing. There are some medical uses for keto, especially if I'm recalling correctly, in those with seizures. But otherwise, it's not great in general. Again, your mileage may vary.
Plant-based.
Plant-based, you usually can't go wrong with that, although I do feel like they're a little elitist because I would, from a pure definitional perspective, consider myself plant-based because my diet is mainly like fruits, veggies, and then I have other things too. But because I'm having meats and stuff, dairy products, etc., they would not, those in that community would not consider that plant-based. But it's still, most of my diet is like plants, and I think that counts. But yeah,
Seed oils,
very over fear-mongered. Actually, I would generally expect people to be healthier if they're having seed oils, because usually those have a lot of unsaturated fatty acids. Those are usually healthier for you.
raw milk.
Depends on your level of risk aversion. I've heard it tastes great. I've known some dairy farmers, they say it's nice, but there is that chance of poisoning yourself.
Intermittent fasting.
Calories in, calories out at the end of the day. But if it works for you, I guess that's a common theme for all these answers. Go for it.
Clean eating.
I think it's nonsense because nobody can agree what clean means. Like, there's this general sentiment of eating in a clean manner, and vaguely people will kind of say that's eating well, but yeah, it doesn't mean anything. Therefore, it's a problem.
Therefore, it's of no use. Organic.
I am very anti-organic, actually. So,
Okay.
I'm actually pro-GMO too. So
Hell yeah, let's go.
organic is just a specific, as it relates to produce, a specific set of farming practices that they have to meet and follow through. One of those being you can't have a GMO starter seed for your crops. Animals, it's a little bit different, but it's mostly this marketing tool more than anything. I think people don't understand that it doesn't mean the food is any healthier. And usually the food is barely detectably different and not always for the better. Organic herbs, for example, tend to not last as long on the shelf. So that's one big downside. Usually it's just costing people more money. It costs the farmers more money. Organic produce costs more land per unit of crop produced. So it's not great for the environment either. And
Cool.
People just have all the wrong ideas about it. And that's where my anti-stance comes from. It's that people are given the wrong impression. And GMO doesn't mean it's going to alter your DNA either. We look at eating chicken and turkey, for example. Those two have very different DNA, but just because something's been modified ever so slightly, the idea that it's going to do something weird to you is just, I don't know, sci-fi nonsense.
Kind of sounds like a person suggesting that doesn't understand how digestion works, which is probably the case. Greens powders.
I tend to be more against them as the days go by, as years go by, just because they get pushed more and more. So my original stance was, okay, it's kind of like a multivitamin plus some other nice stuff. But more and more it seems like this way to make a cheap buck off your audience and then be none the wiser that they're not necessarily getting what they think they're getting. Maybe there's like some placebo to justify it, but I don't know.
Cleanses.
If you have a fully functioning liver, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There are actually eating disorders where people try to cleanse out their guts and have like an empty stomach all the time. So if you're always doing cleanses, that might be a reason to talk to a professional.
Dietary cholesterol.
Dietary cholesterol is overhyped in terms of its effect on the body. If you take in more dietary cholesterol, usually your body just produces less dietary cholesterol. Blood, so serum cholesterol levels are usually more affected by saturated fat intake in the negative. So that'll make it worse. Unsaturated fat will usually help make it better. Fiber will usually help to some degree as well, because the fiber can actually trap some of that through digestion and just help keep things cleaner on the inside. The problem with saturated fat and cholesterol is that it leads to atherosclerosis, which is where plaque builds up in the arteries. And as that builds up over time, eventually a blockage is created. And when that blockage happens, the rest of the body from that artery on is starved of oxygen and you have a heart attack. Literally keeping your artery system cleaner is an actual thing, not just a nebulous term.
Right,
but,
yes.
Certainly something that you would want to do to some degree, depending on how much you're willing to work for it. But yeah, the dietary cholesterol side of things isn't affecting blood cholesterol so much as the saturated fat, the unsaturated fat, things like that, an overall healthy diet.
And that's everything. Thanks to Justin for joining me. Like and comment below if you would like to see or hear from him again, or if you wouldn't, although that would be a very mean thing to do. Links to his Instagram and Body Unbound in the doobly-doo below. Thanks for watching. Now go get friggin' strong.